Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Marcos Villegas for Fight Up TV, powered by Stagefront VIP, with another edition of the Fight Up TV recap slash interview show. A lot of stuff happening since the last episode we did. I apologize. First off, I didn't get a chance to do a show after the Spence and Crawford fight, which was an amazing masterclass performance from Terence Crawford. But there's just so much stuff going on, man. I had to go to not Arizona. Where was I? I was in Dallas. Jeez, that's how busy I've been these last few weeks, man. It's been nonstop event after event after event. I got to go to Arizona this week for the Oscar Valdez Navarrete fight. But on the show today, I had a chance to speak to Abel Sanchez a little while ago. I'm going to work that in here to just get his thoughts overall on the Spence versus Crawford fight. I had spoken to Abel a few months back, and he had picked Errol Spence to win the fight. And Abel feels that Errol wasn't right for the fight, that there was something wrong with Errol Spence coming into the fight, and that he actually text messaged Derrick James about it. Also on here, it's going to be a little chat that I had with Oscar De La Hoya, talking about his documentary that's now on HBO Max, or formerly known as HBO Max, but now it's just known as Max. Good chat. If you haven't seen the documentary, man, I highly suggest you watching. Even if you happen to be a casual person that's not really well versed in the sport, man, it really does a great breakdown of how Oscar grew up, his upbringing, and how that upbringing really affected him, and some of the life choices he made as he was growing from an adult up until the later stages of his career and his life. It's super highly recommended. That documentary. It's a two-parter. It's a must-watch. Really, I can't recommend how good it is. With that, man, some action over the weekend. Let's get right to it, man. Jake Paul, Nate Diaz. You know what? No. Let me reverse back. Let me reverse back to Spence Crawford, and let me say, just kind of some observations, some reflections. Just overall how that week was. One thing that week was crazy. Just one of the more memorable fight weeks that I've been through, and man, I've been through just about everything huge in boxing for the past 15 years. Mayweather, Canelo, Mayweather, Pacquiao, Mayweather, McGregor, Canelo, Triple G. This one was another one that it's gonna stay there in the memory bank for a multitude of reasons. First off, man, funny little incident happened to me on that Friday of the weigh-in. I'm there. I'm set up. They usually give us an hour or less to set up for these weigh-ins, and I'm there doing my thing. I go to reach my bag, and all of a sudden, this freaking camera falls on my head, bonks me on the head, hurt. I'm like, man, I'm like, what the heck, And the guy above me is, hey, I'm sorry. I don't know if he had moved his camera or if I had pulled something that caused the camera to fall down. But I go and I touch on my head, and I see a little bit of blood, and I'm like, crap. Well, it's not a lot of blood. It's a little bit, but it's nothing crazy. All of a sudden, the Showtime PR person that was working the event, Mitch Aberson, who used to be a writer as well, great guy, comes running to me and says, "Hey, dude, are you okay? You're bleeding." And I'm like, "Bleeding from where?" And another guy from another boxing channel, I believe it's Rob Tebbett. It was actually his outlet's camera. It was the Boxing News, Boxing ID, those guys. It was his camera. It wasn't Rob's. It was the guy that works for him, but his camera was actually the one that fell on my head. And he comes up to me and he's like, "Mate, you're bleeding." And he puts his hand right here and he's like, "Look." And I'm bleeding. And my first thought was like, it's not that bad. It's one of those like pro wrestling cuts, like, when they blade themselves above the forehead, they trickles blood, but then it heals up really quick. And Mitch is like, he gives me this paper towel and he goes, dude, you got to go to the bathroom right now. You got to go to the bathroom. You got to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, what the? He's like, you're bleeding. And I'm like, I'm not bleeding that much. So I go and I touch my face again and my whole hand's covered in blood. And I'm like, oh, F, like I got to set up the live for the weigh-in. I got to work the weigh-in. I got to make sure we get our stuff out on time. Like I got a million thoughts. But the one thought is, no, you got to finish the job. You got to finish the job. Like, I don't care, like, how bad is it? Like, you got to finish the job. So they rushed me to the bathroom. I get over to the sinks, and I'm patting my head, and it's like, it's a good amount of blood. My whole face was covered with blood. The EMT people come in, they put peroxide on my head. They clean it up a little bit, and they tell me like, yo, pretty sure you're going to need stitches on that. Just make sure to go to the urgent care. You should go right now. And I'm like, no. I'm going to go back out there. I need to do my job. And they're like, all right, well, don't let, too many hours go by to do it, because then it's going to start healing on its own. And then there's a myriad of problems. And if you don't go at all, like, the oils in your hair, you run the risk of infecting it again. So I go, I clean it up. And then after I come, my hair is all messed up, but I can't do anything because I have this big old wound on my head. The bleeding stopped for the most part after, applying pressure and when they put the peroxide on and all that. I'm like frantically searching for like a cut guy. I'm like, yo, where's Stitch at? Hervey, who works for one of the promoters, he's also a cut guy. I'm looking for him, trying to look for cut medicine or for them to put a glob of Vaseline on my forehead. So I go, get the job done. I the weigh-in goes. We get all the pieces that we need to get finished. And then about like 7 hours later, I finally go to the hospital. And it's funny because Marcus, one of our guys, was like, hey, it's not that bad. I don't think you need stitches. But I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go just in case. My insurance, my premium was like $400 to get to go to the ER. But there's nothing open. I'm like, oh crap, I'm gonna have to pay this stupid $400. I go in there and yeah, the doctor's like, yep, you need a staple. So they go ahead and they staple my head. They put one staple on my forehead. It's weird. It felt like I had a skull cap, like it was like tugging on my head. It hurt at first when they stapled it. As of right now, I still have that staple in my head. I got to get it removed today. But feeling my head, I feel like I'm okay. Everybody was worried I had a concussion or something like that. I'm like, nah, I'm okay. It's just a flesh wound, it was just a small little puncture. But that was kind of like my battle wound story from that Spence Crawford fight. I didn't get a chance to speak on it. It's been 2 weeks now. You guys were hungry for content, and I know you've heard tons of other podcast people speak on the fight. But I just want to say one thing on that performance that I saw. There's been only maybe one other time in all the fights that I covered where I was kind of like, wow, what did I just see? Like, I was in awe, a loss for words. I couldn't process what I was seeing in front of me. Only one other time that I had maybe close to that same feeling, because this was a different feeling. And that other time was when Floyd Mayweather just completely outclassed Robert Guerrero in that fight. And I was working for the boxing channel. I still had Fight Hub. They were allowing me to post the pieces there. You could probably find my recap on the fight. And I think I likened Floyd to a Picasso, and the ring was his canvas, and he was painting with his jab and his straights and his movements all night to create another masterpiece. What I saw Terence Crawford do was a completely different thing, because Robert Guerrero was nowhere near the level of an Errol Spence. He wasn't a pound for pound guy at that point. I believe Robert had beaten Andre Berto, and he got the Mayweather fight. What Terence Crawford did in terms of deconstructing another pound for pound fellow fighter was just so amazing. It was like one of those masterclass, masterpiece moments that you see like in sports. Where were you when Jordan hit that shot at the buzzard? Where were you when Joe Montana threw that touchdown in the end zone back in the late 80s? And where were you moment? And when the fight finished, and you can see my tweets to corroborate this, I just stood there and I was like, what the heck did I just see? Oh my God. Wow. It took me a few days to process that, to get it through my system. And I was like, holy crap. I just saw one of the all-time greatest performances ever put on by a pugilist, ever. What Terence Crawford did, like, this dude showed up 110% when he needed to show up on the biggest stage, on the biggest moment, when he needed to show up the most. And I sat there and I'm like, you can't deny this guy. Like, this guy, we always knew Terence was good. We always knew Terence was great. We always heard, because Aram told me, that Crawford could compete in the era of the Four Kings with Duran, Leonard, Hearns. But the world finally got to see that Terence Crawford is indeed a special fighter, a generational talent, the best of his generation. And wow, I just know that's one of the things when, like, I'm older, I'm going to be like, you know what? I saw Terence do this. I was there. I remember the feeling. I remember texting my friends and just being, what the hell did I just see? It was truly an amazing thing. And it's something that, and I put out the question on Twitter. Regardless of what happens in the Spence versus Crawford fight, should Naoya Inoue be number one pound for pound because he's a smaller guy and he's moving up multiple weight divisions and crushing everybody in his path? And these aren't just like anybody's. These are like number ones, number twos, and world champions, undefeated world champions. A lot of people had a discourse. I personally didn't put out my opinion, but I put the question out there. And I was more or less waiting on what type of fight, what type of performance we saw to kind of give a reasoning as to one or the other. Okay. Because, as a little guy moving up weight classes, it's hard, especially hard to keep your power. And it shows that Inoue has special power and he's a great, great fighter. Stephen Fulton was a world champion at 122, undefeated. Nonito Donaire, Hall of Famer, great. But in the first fight, he went life and death with them. But I know it's funny. It's because, like, Crawford and Inoue both separated themselves so much in their fights. But the thing is, Fulton wasn't on the pound for pound list. Fulton is a great, great fighter, but he wasn't ranked number 4, number 5 on the pound for pound list. What Terence did to Errol, who was on the pound for pound list, to me was like, no argument. This man right here is the best fighter alive, bar none, no questions asked. 1,000%, my friends. 1,000% from what he showed. I was lucky to watch that. It's, as a sports guy, as a boxing fan, like, it's just like, like me, like, I feel like proud or like honored to say, like, you know what, I saw this guy fight live. And when I saw this guy fight live, you know what, I was there at that fight. I saw that happen. And it's the same thing. It's like, I get so proud and honored to be like, you know what, I was there for when Marquez and Pacquiao fought. I was there for those Floyd fights. Sergio Martinez versus Chavez Jr. I was there in the 12th round when he got that knockdown. Timothy Bradley versus Ruslan Provodnikov. I was there. I was there for Juan Manuel Marquez's last fight. I was there for Rios Alvarado. Tremendous freaking fight. Lomachenko when he won his third world title, Lomachenko when he beat Gary Russell Jr. I was there for so many of these great moments. And you add another one, and you add with perspective, we don't know how the rematch is going to go. Based on that performance, I would imagine a lot of fans are going to pick Crawford to get another dub in that rematch. But another great thing is entered into the pantheon of great moments. And sometimes, I liken it to like WrestleMania moments because they've done such a great job of marketing and packaging like these amazing moments that they've had in the wrestling matches. And I feel like that was a moment that's going to stand the test of time. That, I mentioned my interview with Vergil. It's the beginning of the legend of Crawford. And that performance is always going to come up as like one of the greatest all-time performances. Like you got Secretariat, that race, I wasn't alive, but they always talk about like that's one of the greatest, performances from sporting performances, and all these other, like I mentioned, Montana, Brady, Jordan, Kobe, LeBron. Like Crawford, what he did is going to enter into that pantheon of legend. And man, it's been a long time coming for him. He suffered a lot, was dismissed a lot. His resume was dismissed at welterweight. A lot was said about his size, if he could hang at 147. He proved everyone wrong. And you know what? I'd always mentioned this to people because very early on, I had spoken to Terence and found out that he used to wrestle, and I used to wrestle. So I brought it up to him, and we had a great conversation about wrestling and how his kids are. I believe he has a son that wrestles. He's really, really freaking good. And we had a conversation about that. And like, if you've done wrestling, one thing, there's a difference between being strong and then being wrestling strong. Crawford is wrestling strong. It's a different strength. So when they were saying like, oh, 47, he might not be that powerful, that big, I'm like, no. Like, this dude is wrestling strong. Like, there's a video of him like deadlifting like 380 something pounds, and it was going around, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. This dude's wrestling strong from wrestling, cross training. You're on, like, you're in day out, you're on the mats wrestling against guys that are bigger than you. You're forced to take those guys down, to throw them around, to grapple with them. You're going to develop strength that is a lot more and a lot different than other people in other sports specific disciplines. And that wrestling strength carries over to a lot of other things as well. Like, it could be a detriment because you end up being very, very flat footed too as well. But I just knew that about him. Like, this is why this dude's strong like that. But that is my 2 cents on that whole. Who knows what's going to happen with the rematch? If they're going to do a rematch, it's in the contract. It's going to be at 154. Terence already updated his Instagram saying he's going to 154 pounds. So you would imagine, yes, it's going to happen at 154. We have videos out with Virgil Hunter, Kenny Porter, Ray Boom Boom Mancini, all giving their 3 cents or 2 cents actually on the matter. And like I mentioned, we're going to have Abel Sanchez in here. And you know what? I'll probably throw a clip of one of those guys in there in this episode too, to just kind of give you guys their perspective. The chat in full with Vergil is amazing. It has like 350,000 something views right now, because he's said a lot of things from the heart. He got emotional, and he pleaded with, hey, before you go into this rematch, check yourself out, and rightfully so. It's a hard way to make a living. A lot of punches taken in the course of the career of a boxer, not to mention the stuff that happened with the accident. But check those interviews out. They're great stuff. Over the weekend, we saw Jake Paul and Nate Diaz tussle in a 10-round fight that Jake Paul won via unanimous decision. Thoughts? Here's the tricky thing about all this stuff. Let me say it the right, or I got to be very careful, because I might ruffle some feathers, and last thing I need is more people mad at me. But you know what? I'm trying to. I got to be honest too, and say things for what they are. Okay. Uh, last fight Jake had, he fought Tommy Fury. I thought he didn't do that bad, but he lost. Okay. Knocked Tommy down in the last round. Tommy said it was an off balance shot. So, looking at the performances that he's had in those past few fights and in this one, a few things came to mind. Anderson Silva had a good amount of success pushing Jake back. Nate Diaz did the same thing in this fight. And even though he wasn't throwing a lot, he seemed to have in little spots a little bit of success, especially with the uppercut. And it kind of showed like, hey, and this is something that if you follow boxing, you kind of pick up on or you hear from trainers. I've had trainers tell me, I remember one time, actually for Keith Thurman versus Robert Guerrero, Al Bernstein was kind of dissecting the fight with him. And I told him, like, yeah, Robert's going to need to get in and out and try to box from the outside. And he's like, you crazy? Why? Why is he going to do that? Why is he going to allow the power puncher distance to fully extend on his punches and get clipped by the full brunt of his power? No, you got to back that dude up, fight on the inside. And I'm like, wait, fight on the inside with the guy that's such a bigger puncher? It's like, yeah, you got to offset him. You got to make him so that he can't put his weight on his punches, get set for his punches and crack you. That's what you do. And if you notice with a lot of things, like Canelo fought Golovkin the second time, he pushed him back. That's been a time and tested strategy against pressure fighters or guys that are big punchers. Fury and Wilder, Fury went right to him. You got to push the puncher back. You can't give them space. You can't fight them in the mid-range or they're going to crack you. Or you're running a very big risk of getting cracked and it being a short night for you. And I just, at this point, from what I see, Jake kind of struggles with guys that pressure him. Overall, the fight, was it good or not? You guys decide. It is what it is. Nate's always entertaining. I got a chuckle. I laughed at the taunting that Nate does. That was actually what I was looking forward to the most. Like I knew at some point like Nate was gonna start taunting him and everything like that. So like when that happened, I was like, okay, there we go. That's what I wanted to see in the fight. But yeah, no, Jake clearly won. His first time he went 10 rounds. You could tell he was conserving his energy. I felt maybe in the first round he might have shot his load a little bit, but it is what it is. I understand the business of this because a lot of people are like, oh, he went back to fighting an MMA guy. That was the whole argument. Like, look, he fought a real boxer and he lost, and now he's back to fighting MMA guys. But you can't put him in there again with a guy that's gonna beat him, or you got to put him in there again. Like I understand, you got to put him in there again with the guy that's gonna give him give the public enough plausibility. Like, hey, can he beat this guy? But stylistically, that he could win. This was Nate's first boxing match. A very weird, unorthodox style for pro boxing. He has his hands down. I actually thought Jake was going to use a lot of feints because Nate's hands are down all the time. A lot of stabbing jabs to the body. He set up punches at the top. I thought he was going to crack him, but I didn't see a lot of feints. But good cardio from him. One thing a big thing is just like the size difference. Even like when I first interviewed Jake, the first time for that Anissan Gibb fight, man, to now, dude is big. He used to be as skinny as me, and now he's freaking thick. It's crazy actually how much he's gotten like thicker in the last 3 to 4 years. But yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in the future for both guys. But we're gonna go ahead and include some of the post fight reaction from both Nate Diaz and Jake Paul. So check it out.
Good job, and he's fucking athletic, strong dude, and he hits hard and fast. But it ain't nothing I ain't seen before. And I've trained with people I've trained with Mike Russell this camp, and he's the big guy. But these guys could throw down. It's good shit.
My follow up is, did you notice a difference at all, you personally, between like the 4-ounce gloves and the bigger gloves? How does that punch?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I did. It just felt just like spine gloves. I mean, obviously smaller, but way bigger and different than MMA gloves. I don't like MMA gloves either, though, because I can't land as good as punches, and it doesn't feel as good to land punches. So I like the 8-ounce gloves. I think I hit him with some good stuff, but and some good combos and some good shit. But I think I could have done better, and I think, like I said, woulda, coulda, shoulda. Fuck, I'd rather have 3 rounds. I'm tired just thinking about it, but no matter how, I've always felt like that. No matter how many rounds my fight goes, if it didn't go my way, I know if it would have gone longer, I could have won. So I'm like, I want 10 rounds. And they're like, you got 10 rounds. Fuck.
Did anything he do in that ring in terms of his power or when he caught you with that shot that dropped, did it surprise you?
Yeah, I didn't see that one. And I felt that motherfucker. I hop up and recover a little bit. And yeah, no. I know what I was coming for a fight with a big, strong, motivated, pumped up guy to take over the world, and nothing surprises me in this shit. My goal is to get rematch, and any art.
What were you thinking when you got Jake in the guillotine?
Oh, done deal. That was already that fight. In a real fight, this fight's over, and we're sitting up here with the win. But we were participating in a boxing match, and it was a good time. And now I know, because I was curious too. I was like, I'm gonna get in a boxing ring, and I know what I think, and I've trained my whole career boxing with pro boxers on the highest level, as high as I could get, and done really well. And I've never fought in a pro fight, so I think I'll whip all these motherfuckers' ass. But that's just what I think. Let's go in there and get a feel for it. It felt just like what I'd imagined. And what was the question? Yeah, I'll fuck up everybody. What's handing?
In the cage, is that a little preview?
Oh, the guillotine? Yeah, that was too easy. Yeah, it's too easy. And the takedown was too easy, too. I just fucking left a punch in his whole leg in my chest. I'd be trying to take people down in MMA. They smash my hand and fuck me up, and I get tired and all kinds of shit. I'd be like, this is easy to fight boxer in a real fight.
There's this like pressure off, and I know that I'm meant to be here, and I did exactly what I said I was going to do, which is when I lost, I came back and got better and showed the world how to lose on the biggest stage and come back and then win on the biggest stage. And it just goes to show for anyone out there that's losing, it may be a boxing match or maybe in life, take the L on the chin, get up the next day and get back. And
Listen,
don't stop.
That split decision loss was the best thing that could have ever happened for Jake Paul. Because had he had won, nothing probably would have changed. He would have continued with the same team, with the same regiment, with the same focus. So in my mind, that loss has really resulted in him being a much more dangerous and much more high probability of becoming a world champion. You agree?
Yeah, the loss seriously was the best thing. It set me on the path that I was supposed to be on, and you can't cut corners in this sport. And I was in the gym the day after the loss, flew back from the Middle East, and was in the gym every single day up until this fight because I knew I was going to get back and come back stronger. I don't care about that guy. Yeah, he needs to go to rehab. I want Nate in MMA. I want more professional boxers, and I want Canelo. He fucking choked me. He was actually choking me. No, he was actually choking me. And I was like, oh, this is crazy. I didn't think he was going to stop, but he had it in. Because obviously I'm not going to try to defend it. But yeah, like, it's just funny. I was like, this is crazy. But yeah, man, like, that's why I want to do it back in MMA. It's fun, man. I'm with all the shit.
That was both Nate and Jake speaking post-fight about the fight. Yeah, funny moment when he got the guillotine guillotine choke. Yeah, I had a friend tell me, like, you know what, he's gonna do something crazy and end up throwing the fight. I'm like, nah. Like, at the end of the day, he wants to get paid, and if he does that, he's not gonna get paid. But yeah, that was certainly like a highlight moment of the fight, and it showed, like, in a real fight what could happen. I'm not saying that, you know, Jake would lose, because you heard in the thing, Jake said, hey, I would have double-legged him and slammed him down. But if you dumb MMA, like, you know, like, when you do that, you run the risk of getting that choke cranked even more when they're on the ground, especially when they put the leg over you as well. But yeah, that was that fight. Moving to other stuff that's happening as well. Abel Sanchez with us, joining us. I got to get his thoughts, his perspective on the Spence Crawford fight. Canelo versus Charlo, and a few other things. So let's go ahead and take it to my man, Abel Sanchez. Hey, what's up, everybody? Marcos Villegas for Fight Up TV, powered by Stagefront VIP, being joined with Abel Sanchez in the house with us. Abel, thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure to have you on. And I want to get right to it, man. A few months ago, I think when I interviewed you, I asked you about your Spence and Crawford prediction. I believe you had picked Spence based on his amateur experience and just overall what he brought as a fighter. Seeing the fight, Abel, what'd you make of the fight overall from your trainer perspective?
Terence looked like $1 million. He looked so good. He just did everything right, positioned right, was reading right. And for some reason, to me, Spence just didn't look like he was all there. I know that there's a better Spence in there. I don't know what the circumstances were leading up to the fight. So I don't know if he's had problem making weight. He looked drained. He walked into the ring. His eyes didn't look good, but you can't take nothing away from Terence. Terence did a heck of a job.
Yeah, you know, I've heard that from a few trainers saying like, hey, that doesn't settle well with me. He looked off. It's an interesting thing. Like, you as a trainer, you notice, like, you saw his eyes weren't right. What other things like are a big tip off that someone could not be right if that was the case? Because as we've seen and we've always known, like, Terence is a special talent.
He is a very special talent, but you don't knock somebody down at that level with a jab that really didn't hit him in the chin, hit him like behind the ear, kind of. And it didn't just knock him off balance, it knocked him down. So that just tells me that maybe legs weren't underneath him. He was a little weak. But all that being said, you can't take nothing away from Terence. Terence fought a heck of a fight.
Looking at the fight and seeing how dominant Terence was from like round 2 all the way up into the stoppage, you know, what was some of the takeaways you feel you had in the fight? What were some of the things that you felt that were going well and were going wrong?
Well, for Terence, I've always been, I don't want to say a fan, but I've always been an admirer of the young man that works the mitts with him. I don't know his name. I'm sorry.
Saul
Saul. Okay. I've always been impressed by the way he works the mitts with him. He's not working the mitts for Saul. He's working the mitts for Terence. Terence is throwing the punches correctly. Terence is positioning correctly. He's having them do things that you're supposed to do and not just make it a show. So as far as Terence is concerned in the fight, he was positioning right. He was adjusting his distance with his feet and not his body. His punches were all from very good foundation. He was positioning well. He was reading well. He just couldn't do nothing wrong. Of course, on the other side, Spence just didn't look right to me, and he just couldn't catch up with the timing that Terence had at the beginning of the fight. And then as the fight went on, it was just too easy for Terence. I believe that somewhere around the 6th, I think Terence backed off a little bit, wanting to not so much punish him anymore, but to land a couple punches where the referee could step in and stop it.
Yeah, I spoke to Kenny Porter a few days ago, and he had told me, like, yeah, the fight should have been stopped sooner.
Yeah, and I feel that Terence may have known that or may have felt that, but so he wasn't going to really press the issue. He was going to maybe land a couple shots, get an opportunity to land a couple shots where the referee steps in, and sure enough, he did. A little too late, but he did.
With this fight, like, what do you feel like should happen next, in your opinion? I know there's a signed rematch for them, though the weight I believe is going to be at 154, but just overall, like, the aftermath of all this, like, where do you think both Crawford and Spence should go after this?
Well, I think they should do the rematch. I think that since they signed it, they should abide by it, one. And two, if Spence had gotten beat and he was 100% to a lot of us that watch him fight, then okay, maybe then I would say, no, let's go on to something else. But I don't think Spence was all there. So I think a rematch should be done. And if he beats him at 154, then really there's no excuse unless he killed himself to make a weight again, which he shouldn't do. But then these guys sometimes are a little crazy how they lose their weight. But I do think a rematch is in order.
How different does a rematch look then with him at 154 and not having to cut that weight?
Well, he still had to cut weight because I'm sure he's not going to be 154 when he starts. But as a lot of us have mentioned, and as you mentioned, other coaches have said he wasn't right. If Spence and Derrick don't learn from this lesson, then there's nothing you can say. If he gets beat again the same way, then Terence is a real special talent.
Yeah, no. Well, a lot of people have said, "Hey, look, same thing happens. Like Terence is just that good. Regardless of what you think of the weight. Spence was in the fight, and it just was a different level that Crawford showed up with."
Well, I hope that's not coaches saying that, because if it's a coach, he doesn't know nothing about the game. It may be fans that are saying that, but coaches know. I mean, coaches know the troubles and the issues that we go through trying to get a fighter down to a particular weight. Maybe he started out too high and it took him too long or he didn't do it quick enough to get down to a respectable level so that he wouldn't have a difficult time the last couple of weeks. So there's a lot of issues that a lot of people don't know that happen in camp. And like I said, if Derrick and Errol don't learn from this valuable lesson, then they deserve whatever they get.
Dang. So you're convinced that he wasn't right for the fight?
Oh, he definitely wasn't right. You just look at him. Look at his eyes going into the fight, man. He looked like he was loaded. That just fatigue. That just the body just don't want to be there. I mean, there's no way you can recuperate in those from the time they weighed in to now to the fight night. He's going to get a lot of food in him. He's going to get a lot of liquids in him, but he's still drained. He still killed himself to make weight. And to me, it was obvious. I didn't see the press conference, but somebody told me that at the press conference, he looked like a skeleton. I don't know if that's true, but is that true? Did you see the press conference?
Well, I was there at the post-fight press conference.
No, the prior press conference.
Oh, no. I was there too. I talked to him at the final press conference, and yeah, he looked like he was cutting. To be honest, he looked like a cut. Like I don't know if it was close to like when Devin Haney cut for his second Kambosos fight. He looked really sunken in, but he looked like he was going through a weight cut, a rough one.
And you see a different guy fight night. I mean, that's not the same guy you were talking to before on Wednesday or Tuesday, whenever that press conference was. So to me, that could have been one of the issues. The other issue is that he had a great fighter in front of him.
Yeah. And I don't like. I've been going with everybody that I talk to, and they either bring that up or Crawford, but I think also too, like, what I don't want to get lost in all this is how great of a fighter Crawford is, or like kind of like dismiss like his abilities and how good he is with that, even though it's up to whoever's watching this to kind of make their conclusion as to what they feel about what happened. But given that, how long should he wait? Like, you're a coach, you've been with fighters that have cut a lot of weight, and should he go into an immediate rematch? Should he wait a long time and then go into like a feel out fight at 54 and then go into the rematch? Like, what do you think, Abel?
From what I've heard, I guess the rematch is supposed to happen in December. If it was me, I wait until maybe March or April. Let him put this behind him and let him start from scratch maybe 3 or 4 months before the date. But I spoke with Derrick, not in words, but in text, and he did tell me that they're talking about December. So I hope they wait a little bit. Like I said, March, April would be best for me, as far as I'm concerned. Just give them a little more time.
What'd you guys talk about?
I would just tell them to we all have those days, man. We all have, everybody that's in this business as a coach and as a manager and as a fighter has gone through those days where nothing was right. Nothing was right. There's nothing that Derrick could have said in a corner. There's nothing that Derrick could have done. It was all, to me, it was lost prior to the fight. So just to keep his chin up, and he's got some great fighters under him. He's a good coach. He's going to be a great coach eventually when the time comes. But for right now, just keep your chin up and let's go get some, because there's great ones out there coming.
Was he? I would imagine he's pretty down, but Did he express that to you, that he was pretty down about what happened?
No, we really didn't get that deep into it, but I imagine he is. We're never going to admit it that we are. You know, we always try to say that it's just another fight, but it's not really. It's a very important fight that sometimes defines us in the wrong way. He's a very good coach. He's going to have some great fighters in the future, or even more great fighters in the future, and he's going to have some great wins in the future.
Did he tell you that Errol wasn't right?
No, I didn't ask him. You know,
Okay.
it's none of my business, none of anybody's business. That's something between him and Errol.
Okay. December. Wow. Yeah, a lot of people have been like shared the same sentiment as you, Abel, like, hey, take your time. Errol should do like a battery of tests. A lot of coaches said to just check that he's okay neurologically as well.
They do a lot of tests before the fight. It's not, he hasn't had the kind of fights that are going to require that. Let me just say that fight was tough, but it wasn't the kind of fights that, or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 fights that have been the same way. He hasn't had those kind of battles in the past. So yeah, they can do tests, but I don't think the neurological part of it was the issue and is going to be the issue. He just was not there. He was just not there mentally or physically.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, a lot of people mentioned because of the car accident and the accumulation of things from that up to this point to maybe, do a battery of tests.
Yeah, well, they can. I mean, they should. He should check himself completely out. If not for this game, it's not for the next fight, but for himself and for his family. But really, a lot of people don't understand that the damage that is caused when there's damages in a fight is not necessarily from the fight. It's from the training camps. From the training camps. Imagine, I imagine that he sparred. What would you say he sparred? 120 rounds for this fight?
You would know more than me.
Yeah.
You're the expert.
Okay,
But
so
that's usually...
maybe he sparred 100. Maybe he sparred 120 rounds. Maybe 4 weeks, 5 weeks of 3 days a week. Maybe 8 to 10 rounds a week. So you got say 25 rounds per week. 5 weeks, 120, 125 rounds. He's a young guy, so he can handle that. Some of the older guys we wouldn't do that with, but some of the younger guys, yeah, you do that. So if he sparred that many rounds, just think about this. If he's got what, he's got 25. How many fights does he have now?
I believe this was the 29 or 30. I have to double check what he's up there.
Let's just say for the last 10 fights that have been 10 rounders or championship fights, he sparred 120 rounds. That means that he's fought 12 fights before his actual fight.
Yeah, this was his 29th fight.
Okay, so he's fought, let's just say 10 fights that he's fought in the 10-round range, okay? So if he sparred 120 rounds for every one of those fights, that means he sparred, before his fight, he sparred 120 rounds. That means he sparred 12 10-round fights or 10 12-round fights. So the accumulation of rounds in the gym, because you still get hit, you still spar with good guys to prepare. That's really where the damage comes. So if they're going to do neurological tests, yeah, they should do them, but they should also watch how you come into the fight as far as rounds are concerned. At 29 fights, what is he, 33, 34 years old now?
Somewhere around there, yeah, early 30s.
He's started to get to the point where maybe we need to, Derrick, I'm sure will figure that out, that he doesn't necessarily need that many rounds. I remember one time Canelo said that he sparred 170 rounds for a particular fight. I don't really remember which one, but that's a lot of rounds in the gym. And that's a lot of punishment in the gym. So with Gennady, for the last 3 or 4 fights, I was only sparring him like 70, 75 rounds. Why? Because again, as you get older, you need to preserve some of that. And mind you, there were good rounds with good guys, but they weren't that many rounds. And they were against guys that were going to make him think and make him do the things instead of just sparring just for sparring with somebody and getting hit because you don't want to hit them. That all takes its toll.
So if he's 100% at 154, given what happened in this fight, would you still favor Spence, or would you kind of slightly lean towards Crawford now?
You know, I'd have to make a real a close fight or give the edge to Crawford. Crawford showed me a lot of things in this fight that were very nice. Like I said, he did so many things so well that I had never really noticed that before in him. I was never really I'm not really a guy that watches a lot of fights. I like Spence because I like him coming out of the Olympics, him and Marcus Brown. But Terence did a lot of nice things in the ring that that very few people do.
He wants to be undisputed at 154 pounds. Jermell Charlo's the champion over there. What do you make of a potential matchup with Jermell? And you know, hypothetically speaking, because Jermell has a tough fight with Canelo, and we don't know what's going to happen if he's going to choose to stay at 54, if he ends up beating Canelo at 68. There's a lot of intangibles there. But if
he doesn't beat Canelo.
He doesn't beat Canelo.
He doesn't beat Canelo.
No, quicker guy coming up.
Doesn't beat Canelo. Coming up, the other guy was a 140-pounder to begin with. He was
Jermell?
a 47-pound champion. You know, people forget this guy was a 40. Was it Canelo for 147-pound champion?
No. His first title at 54.
Okay, but he fought at 47 at the beginning.
He did, yes.
Okay, so he's a guy that was going up 47. The same. No, it's a. He may have moved up in weight, but he still started his career. Most of his fights were at 47, 54.
But he was a kid though, Abel. He was like 16 years old.
He was still a fighter. He's still a fighter developing, and I think that Canelo's just. I think at that level, Canelo's a more rounded fighter at that level. I don't like what Charlo looked like against the Argentinian. What was his name? The first fight?
Castaño.
I didn't like what the pressure that Castaño put on him, and Castaño. It just Canelo's going to be a different fight, man. He's earned where he's at.
Yeah, I'm going to touch in further with this Canelo and Charlo fight. But if Charlo were to face Crawford today, right now, in 5 months, how would that go down?
I would like to see Spence and Crawford first at 154, so I can see how Terence does at 154, because he is moving up from 140. But listen, there's very few guys that are going to hang with him. Very few guys that are going to hang with Terence Crawford from the fight that we saw a couple Saturdays ago. Special talent.
You've been around a lot of special talented guys, and you've also seen a lot of the all-time greats fight. Bob Arum for years has said, like, hey, Crawford could have hung with anybody, any era. You know, in your opinion, given your perspective and a little bit of your insight, like how good is Crawford when compared to like the special fighters across the eras?
You know, I've never been one to compare him in the eras. Let's just celebrate Crawford for who he is today and what he is today. It's difficult to compare him because there's some great fighters back then. We don't know how they compare. That he's as good as those guys in their eras, absolutely. But to compare him like that is not fair to either guy. Let's just celebrate what Crawford did on Saturday for me, because I thought he looked like one of the all-time greats.
Good response, because there's so many factors, and I think the biggest is, you know, the athletes now are bigger, stronger, faster due to nutrition, better recovery methods, and all that. So that's what I always say. I always feel like, hey, if they're bigger, stronger, faster now, for the most part, many of those guys would do very well. But yeah, there are a special few that, regardless of like what era, they would have, you know, done very well.
The one thing that I will say is that Crawford is a throwback, and very few guys are that way. Canelo is too in a way. Who else can I? Inui. They're a throwback to the way fighters used to train and used to practice their craft. The craft is not practiced today like it was practiced back then. They were better fighters, technically more sound fighters then than they are today. There are exceptions. Of course, we have Lomachenko, who's tremendously talented, but you have a lot of guys in the top 10, a lot of guys in the top 5, a lot of guys that are champions that are not as good technically sound as the guys in the past were. Today, for some reason, it's let's see who gets there first instead of making sure that when we get there, we stay there. And that's why I think I'm a admirer or fan, I guess you want to say. I like watching him hit the mitts with Saul, because I think Saul does some of those things that not so much the mitts themselves, but just some of how he delivers his punch. I'll tell you another guy too that I saw doing it too is Devin Haney's dad. I saw a little clip of Devin Haney's dad doing some things with him that were not a show. They were not a show for the coach. They were actually practicing the craft the way it's supposed to be practiced.
All right, let's get your breakdown now, Abel. Let's get a little spicy. Canelo versus Charlo. What happens?
I think Canelo decision.
Decision. Wow, a lot of people said knockout.
No, I think Canelo decision because Charlo is a good fighter. Charlo to me is the kind of fighter that will step up to the competition. In other words, he may not thought about what I said a little while ago about the Argentinian. He may not thought a lot about that Argentinian, so he did step up to the competition. But I think he will step up. He'll give Canelo a hard time early. But I think Canelo finally catches up with him and maybe puts him down one time. But I think he wins maybe a 16-12 decision somewhere in there.
Yeah. Do you feel that way because of Canelo's last fight and how he looked against Ryder?
No, I just think that Charlo is a good champion.
Yeah.
Maybe not as busy enough for me, but I think he's demonstrated that he's a good champion.
Yeah, because many have mentioned that performance and say like, hey, look, it's clear. This is their opinion. It's clear that Canelo's slipping now. He's on the decline.
Listen, we were just talking about Charlo in the Argentinian. Charlo didn't think much of the Argentinian. Maybe he didn't prepare as well as he should have prepared. Maybe it could be the same thing for Canelo against Ryder. Ryder was somebody who was supposed to blow out with one punch. Everybody was saying. So maybe that gets in their mind and that doesn't happen. And he doesn't look as good as he's looked. But he knows that, I'm sure in his mind and in Eddie's mind, Charlo is a challenge.
Yeah, and the other thing too, it's like he knocked down Ryder like 2 times. Like he didn't lose a round. Like he beat him up pretty bad in the fight. So like
we're punishing him for looking bad.
Exactly. Well, I think it's because people expected him, like you said, to knock one punch knockout, and like the dude's durable. Like he could take a beating.
Yeah. The one thing about Canelo, he's not a devastating puncher, but he's a concussive puncher. He just hits you and hits you and hits you. He's very busy. He lands his punches. He's not going to knock you out with one shot like a Nui, but he's going to beat the heck out of you, man. He's going to beat you up, and sometimes it's better get knocked out than to get beat up like that, you know? So I think that he beats on Charlo and eventually just, I'm not going to say Charlo quits, but maybe quits in his mind, like quits trying to win and just survive. But I think he gives him a tough fight.
Yeah, Charlo's clearly the quicker guy, the faster hands, just based on training footage. But I think stylistically he has to avoid a up close fight with Canelo.
True. So that if the fight goes on and Canelo's beating on him, it doesn't matter where he's sitting him. If he's beating on him, he'll slow down. And like I said, the first part of the fight will be difficult because he is going to be the quicker guy. But as time goes on, now it also too depends on what weight he comes into the fight too.
Yeah, Derrick told me he wants him to come in like at 64.
Okay, Derrick is his coach.
He wants him to be quick and agile against Canelo.
Yeah,
that's why.
If he fight at 54, how can 10 pounds more make you quick and agile? Okay, Canelo fight at 60. That means at 68 he's not going to be quick and agile. If that's what Derrick thinks is the best weight for his fighter, then that's what it should be. Hopefully it won't weigh him down too much, because if he weighs 64 for the fight or for the weigh-in, let's just say, how much is he weighing 65? How much is he weighing fight?
I would imagine pretty close to that, right?
Not necessarily. If he's not going to come into camp at 64.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Obviously, he's probably coming in like 10 pounds, 12 pounds heavier.
He's probably, usually they're 20, 25 pounds above the weight, which is not, it depends on how he loses it, but he gets down to 64 by fight night. He's 72, 73. Is that going to be too heavy for him? Whereas if he fought at 54, I don't think he'd gain more than 10, 12 pounds by fight night.
Interesting. Yeah. The other interesting thing too is Canelo's used to taking a punch from guys at 68 and above, and he's handled that power pretty well. This is the first time Jermell is going to be taking power from a guy bigger than him on that aspect. And then on the other aspect, like Canelo's used to these bigger guys punching him. Like how is the power of Jermell going to translate into this weight class?
Well, sometimes, as you mentioned, sometimes the quickness and the fast hands are just as effective as the power, the slower power. If he's able to catch him early with some decent shots and the quick shots, 1-2s and even 3s, with the speed, there's no doubt in my mind that he could hurt him, because speed kills sometimes. But if the fight goes on and Canelo's defense is on point and he doesn't get caught with shots early, it may be a different fight towards the end.
Mm, mm. Abel, you're still in retirement, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I went over to the summit. I saw the Jaime there. He's
Yeah.
the new owner of the gym. How did that all come about?
I was ready because of COVID and because of a lot of other,
And I was kind of bummed out, by the way, too.
yeah, a lot of situations in my uh, relationship with my fighters, with some of my fighters and some of their management. It just was at the point where I was tired of playing the politics, man. I was tired of playing the game. I'm 68 years old. I think um, I thought it was time for me to spend a little more time with my children and my grandchildren. And if I didn't sell the gym, then I'm still a coach. I'm still gonna go to camp. You'd call me up tomorrow and say, hey, listen, I got this kid that I think he's gonna be there. And we go to the gym and we start working. And now it's another process of 3 or 4 years of getting to that point. So I felt that if I didn't sell it, I was never gonna be out of it. Now, don't get me wrong, if the right situation came along where I could go to camp with somebody as an assistant or an advisor of some sort and help with my whatever it is that I do well, then I wouldn't mind helping somebody. The person had to be the right person, of course. But as far as me having a training camp, that's finished.
That's finished, done, completely finished.
Yep. Yes.
Wow. They still have one of your golden rules up there.
What's
Which
that?
one?
No girls?
Yes.
No girls?
No womans. Even though they spelled it wrong, but they put no womans in there.
Yeah. You know what? I've always thought it was a distraction. There's some ladies, of course, some fighters that are fighters. They're women, but they're fighters. But some of the ladies that used to come in there with the boyfriends, let's just say, and they come in dressed in a way that other fighters are gonna look at them, and I didn't want a problem in there. I didn't want you bring your lady in, and one of the fighters looks at her and makes a rude comment because they have been in camp for 8 weeks, and now we got an issue, and why create the issue? That's really why I did it. I just didn't want the distraction or the chance of somebody saying something stupid.
Do you miss it?
I miss it terribly, man. Of course. But I don't miss the training camp aspect of it. I miss the fighters. I miss being in the gym with the fighters. I miss coaching. I miss being in the corner in the fights, even though I still work some corners with Ben. Ben Lira, I work all with him. I assist him in the corner. But I miss just the camaraderie of being around the fighters and watching them smile and watching them grow. I think that's something that can never go away. They're like your children.
Yeah, no, that's true. It takes a while for it to get out of your system, and I don't think it ever really does completely get out of your system.
It never does. That's why I knew that if I didn't sell the gym, that I could never be out of it. So this way, I kind of have like a buffer. I don't have the ability to just shoot on up the big bear and boom, I got a training camp. But the on the plus side, I'm spending more time with my wife and with my children and with my grandchildren, and I have 3 of them that are in the toddler stage and below. So that's been a lot of fun being able to watch them grow.
Oh, I bet, because this job in general, I think for everyone, but especially the fighters and the trainers, requires a huge sacrifice that ends up taking a lot of times away from spending with your family and friends.
Yeah, I think people don't realize, a lot of people that are not in this business don't realize that a fighter spends a lot of time away from his family. But a fighter only has one career. We have 6, 7 careers. Look at Derrick right now. How many fighters does he have? He's got 6 or 7 decent fighters, good fighters. So that means he's got 7 careers, not just one. He's got 7 careers he's got to juggle and be away. So when he gets through with one fight, he's got 2 or 3 fights coming up. So where's the time for family? Where's the time for personal life? And I think a lot of those things are missed by a lot of coaches that, of course, we love what we're doing, but still, we're missing out on a lot of things that we may regret later.
I know we've spoken about this before in the past. To you said, hey, it's all good. If you saw Gennady, you would go up to him and shake his hand and hug him and all that. But has there been any movement on that? Have you spoken to him at all?
No, I have not seen him. I work with Tom. I see Tom probably once a week. and I do his shows. I do a little commentary on his shows, but I have not seen Gennady. I understand he's not in California anymore. I don't know where he's at.
Oh, wow.
But I understand he's not in California anymore. But no, listen. We created something in our gym. He created something in our gym that will never be replaced. It'll never be forgotten. We made history. Funny thing, watching the Spence and Crawford fight, I had at this place that we went to see it at a friend's house, an ex-fighter that used to be in the gym was there watching the fight too. And we all have this perception of how people are, right? Gennady is a real nice young man. Gennady was always a nice young man in the gym. Gennady was always a hard worker, as far as I'm concerned anyway. That towards the end of his career, maybe the influence of outside influences created something that didn't work for us. But this young man that was watching the fight said to me, I was asking him, what was it about camp? You know, I just wanted like information so that I could figure out why we had the kind of success that we did. Maybe what was it about camp that that you relished or you enjoyed, and he kind of said the same thing about being around the guys. And I said, well, what about food? Because I've never had a chef in camp. You know, I had 6 different nationalities. I wasn't going to have 6 different chefs. They all cooked for each other. They all tended for each other, all helped each other with their food. And they would go to the market and pick up the food for themselves, and then they cook it, right? And he says, but you know, Coach, I don't think I ever said this to you. He said, did you know that Gennady would more than not, let's just say of 10 times, he said 9 times he would go to the market, he'd buy food for everybody. Imagine that. He'd go grocery shopping and buy food for everybody in camp. So wow. You know, the reason I say wow is because the perception that sometimes people think is that everybody's fending for each other, right? I mean, for themselves. Nobody cares for anybody. But this guy, being the leader of my gym at the time, was taking care of everybody. It was heartwarming to hear that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. That's leadership right there.
Yeah, that's leadership, exactly. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, he's vacated his I don't know how many of his belts, but the belts that he had is vacated, and yeah, it's just kind of from like the outside looking in, it looks like he's close to retiring.
Well, I did a interview a month and a half ago, and unfortunately, I forget who the young man was that I did it with him, but how it was put was that Abel Sanchez said that Gennady went out with a whimper. That's not what I said.
Mm-hmm.
What I said was that if it had been Tom Loeffler involved, if I'd have been involved in his walking away, he had 4 belts or 3 belts. I'm sure that his walking away wasn't something that he planned that day or when he gave up the belt that day. I'm sure there was something that he and his family talked, he and his advisors talked, and what they wanted to do in the future. I think that if he was going to give up the belts, I think that Tom Loeffler would have set up some kind of press conference at the StubHub or at the Forum or something. No, spend a little money, have a press conference, have a luncheon, and have him announce that he's retiring, or not retiring, but he's giving up the belts. And if a fight comes up that's a good fight for him, that he'll fight it. Belts are not necessary. I think at his level, belts are not necessary. I think if that right fight came along, he could fight it without the belts. But I think a press conference, you're talking about a great fighter. You're talking about a guy that's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's a first-time ballot Hall of Famer. Come on. They should have, in my opinion, they should have given him off a send-off that was worthy of his greatness.
Yeah, we don't know what's happening. I know Munguia wants a fight with him. Charlo's been asking for a fight with him. Berlanga's been asking for a fight for him.
Listen, if it's within the next year, Munguia doesn't want nothing to do with Golovkin. And Berlanga even worse. Charlo, the elder Charlo, he's got quick hands. He's got very decent skills, very good skills. He's a champion. That could be a difficult fight. I still think Gennady beats him, but it could be a difficult fight. But the other 2 guys, they need to stay away from Gennady Golovkin. At least right now, anyway, the next year. Don't wait till he's 48 like Bernard, but right now I think they need to stay away from him.
Oh, wow. So you feel even what they're at right now, Gennady, given his age, can still go through
Absolutely.
them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Listen, they haven't developed like we thought they were going to develop. Okay, Berlanga hasn't developed like. Yes, you can give him a bunch of tomato cans at the beginning. There's a lot of guys that build up records very well, which is the way you're supposed to do it in this business. But along the way, we as the coaches are supposed to develop the talent. So when he gets to the point where he has to fight somebody, that fighter that was showcased at the beginning is going to come out when he fights, better fighters. He hasn't done that. He hasn't looked like that. He hasn't looked like he's evolved like he's supposed to. The same thing with Munguia. Munguia's got a lot of fights, but Munguia really hasn't showed us that he's on that level yet. Anyway, maybe he will.
Still a lot to work. A lot of work to be done for both. I feel. And Munguia in that last fight against Dervinchenko, hell of a fight, but he almost got put out. Almost got put out in that fight.
And Dervinchenko's a 60-pounder. Dervinchenko's a smaller guy. Munguia is a young guy that's fresh still. Dervinchenko's had some difficult fights, 3 or 4 difficult fights, tough career. So that he didn't manhandle him like he should have to belong at that level. I'm not saying he's not a good fighter. He's a very good fighter. He's a champion, but for him to belong at that level and be considered with those guys, I think he needed to dominate a little better.
Abel, with the gym, if the opportunity came, you're great at real estate to flip it back. Would you try to buy it back?
No, you know what? There's a lot of facilities everywhere. But if they got tired of it and they gave me they made me an offer, then yeah, I would consider it, of course. Yeah. In the real estate part of it and also in the gym part of it, but there's a lot of training camps all over the world that you can go to train. In fact, I think Sebastian Fundora's dad just bought a piece of property up by Bakersfield that they're trying to make a training camp, which is fantastic. He's putting his money where his mouth is. The coach Freddie, and that's what you have to do. You have to take a chance. There's not enough coaches out there taking a chance to delve completely into it, like let's just say I did, or Ronnie's done, or several other coaches have done, where you completely immerse yourself in the business and do the things that are necessary, spend the money that is necessary to be able to not only develop your skills, develop your career, but develop other fighters. That's the one thing that I don't really like about what they're doing here in Big Bear with the Munguia. The coaches that are not in the camp, I drive by it because I have another house up here. So I drive by it all the time, and I see it vacant. They're not using the facility to develop other talent. I'm sure the coaches have a lot of other fighters that could benefit from being up in Big Bear, and being around good fighters makes you a better fighter.
Yeah, very true. I believe it's your old gym, and I don't know if Oscar still has his gym house over there. I don't know if Shane still has his gym house over there.
Shane has his, but Shane's a little bit smaller, his place, and I don't think that he has it set up that way to bring in 3 or 4 guys that are gonna develop, within 3 or 4 years. When we were running the gym here in Big Bear, we always had, anywhere from 6 to 7, 8 guys, and we always had people always knew that there was sparring up there. There was always good sparring. So if you came up, you're gonna get sparring. If you came up, you're gonna get some good sparring, and you're gonna get the altitude, and you're gonna get treated well, and we're all gonna benefit from it. I don't think that Shane is doing that, because I don't think Shane wants to put the time into it, one. And I think his son is in Vegas anyway, so there's no reason for him. And I don't think Munguia is doing that. His people are not using it to the fullest, I think. And that's sad.
Yeah,
We saw it. It's set up it's still set up the same way. The pictures may be gone, but it's still set up the same way. I left everything.
I was there. I saw it. Yeah, everything's the same.
Yeah. What I did,
minus you and the t-shirts.
Just so you know, what I did was I volunteered, or I offered to come in for a couple months and kind of teach them, or kind of show them what I did. Doesn't mean that they have to do it. It's just to show them what we did, and with the equipment, how we use the equipment and all that. And they didn't want me to, so that was okay. I mean, but I don't think you're ever too old to learn something.
Yeah.
And they could have just had another view of how it was done, and because it was successful, that gym was successful. We made a lot of champions there. We made 6 world champions. So I think that the fact that there's so much equipment there that maybe they have no clue how to use it properly, or the way that it was designed, because I didn't take nothing. I left everything as it was.
Yeah, we're starting to, it's interesting that you mentioned the Bakersfield thing, because Canelo and Oscar Valdez actually went to Lake Tahoe for this camp. Valdez has a fight with Navarrete, and I know a lot of the old school guys, like Chavez and others, used to train in Lake Tahoe.
Yeah, I've trained in Lake Tahoe too. I had
Yeah.
Orlin Norris up there training when he had one of his defenses back in the '90s. We trained at Harvey's Hotel up there in the early '90s. But yeah, listen, anywhere that's away from home, away from your normal routine, is a good thing in my opinion. Now, if you put it in a place where it's altitude, that's even better. If you put it in a place that is set up as a training camp, I think that was the great thing about my gym here that I had here in Big Bear. That is that it was all set up so that's all it was. That's all it was. It wasn't where other people could come in. You could come in and have your training camp, and nobody had to see you. The doors were closed. Nobody came in and bothered you. You did your thing. In the morning in the runs, nobody bothered you. And I think that kind of atmosphere creates you wanting to be better, work harder, follow the rules. The guys didn't like driving off the mountain because a lot of them got car sick. When it's an hour off the mountain to San Bernardino, let's just say. So they didn't want to do that, so they stayed in camp. We had a captive audience. So sometimes people would ask me, what is the benefit up there? Is it the altitude? I said, no, I think the altitude helps but for me, the most important part was the solitude. They were away from everything. And I think that when you get away, like I said, from your normal routine every day, where your buddies can't call you and bug you and want you to go out with them, then I think you're able to devote the kind of effort that your career deserves. I mean, you're only going to get this chance once. How many fighters have you talked to when they get a little older says, I wish I had trained a little bit harder. Damn it, I wish. Oscar De La Hoya, I think, has got a
documentary.
Documentary. I haven't seen it.
Really good.
Some people have told me that he comes out and says, I should have done this. And why does it have to be I should have instead of, remember that sign that I had in my gym above the double end bag? At the end, it says, imagine, what if? Okay, the song by John Lennon, Imagine, is one of my favorite songs. But when I heard that song, I printed it out, and then I wrote in a marker, what if? And what that meant to me, and when somebody would ask me about that, is imagine what if I trained a little bit harder. Imagine if I ran a little bit harder. Imagine if I sparred a couple more rounds. Imagine if I listened to what I'm supposed to be doing. Imagine if I watched my diet. All those things. Imagine what could have been. That's exactly what Oscar is saying right now. What could have been.
Yeah, that's very true. That the documentary is great. By the way, you should watch it, Abel. It's really good. It gives you a different perspective of Oscar and what he had to go through, especially in his young life, and what happened in his young life. How it kind of sprang up a lot of the problems he had throughout his life. But it's a very, very good watch. Abel, man, hey, great chatting with you as always. Glad we got you on. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, let me make one more comment.
Yeah.
I just read the other day that a young lady is calling out a world-rated welterweight. We'll just keep names out of it. Clarissa Shields is calling out Keith Thurman that she could.
Oh, yeah. She could beat him in a fight.
That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Why?
Because first of all, I think that Keith Thurman is a gentleman, and he probably would not try to do to her what he would try to do to Terence, let's just say, or to anybody that he fought. But that is ridiculous, man. That is this is the era that we live in. That is so ridiculous. Ask any other than Shields. Ask any other lady fighter, any woman fighter that has sparred in the gym with anybody in the gym, and they'll tell you, even champions, they'll tell you that the guys have to take it easy on them.
Don't tell Clarissa that. She's gonna come after you, Abel.
You know what? I think that they need to. She just needs to do her thing. And then another thing, it's not like she's a devastating puncher. She got 2 knockouts against women. What's that other kid called? One Time Thurman?
Keith One Time Thurman, yeah.
Wasn't he a pretty good puncher at the beginning of his career?
Devastating puncher.
Yeah. So it just that people entertain that people even actually print that people even talk about that. I think, to me, it's ridiculous.
Well, it's the same thing when back in the day they were saying that Ronda would beat the crap out of Floyd Mayweather.
Who was saying that?
Everyone, the freaking
Uh,
MMA people and the DMZ and all these people were,
and then you see
fire.
it, and then you see a woman boxer beat the hell out of her.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what I'm saying. It just sometimes we get carried away, or people get carried, the media gets carried away with things that are not reality, man. That's not really reality. It's like the fight that just happened the other night, Saturday night. They're
Jake,
talking about he could fight.
Did you wait? Did you see it?
No, I didn't see it.
Oh, come on, Abel.
I didn't see. I'll tell you what. The wrong fight was the main event.
The wrong fight was
the real fighters fought the semi.
Yeah, Amanda and Heather.
Yeah, that's the real fighters right there. But
don't tell Jake that. He says he's going to be world champion one day.
World champion, what? Like Butterbean?
Full world champion.
Don't get me wrong. I think that anybody, if you have a gimmick, make as much money as you can, and he is. I feel great that he's doing that for him. But you have Andre Ward once said you have to stay in your lane, man. Didn't Andre Ward said that one time? And I think he was saying that at us anyway. But anyway, you have to stay in your lane. And I'll quote him. You have to understand who you are. Let him fight a top 10 cruiserweight, let's just say, or bridger weight, whatever weight that he is. And let's see how he does. I mean, I'm not talking about Tommy Fury.
Yeah.
Tommy Fury's not even top 10. And what did he do to him?
Oh, he got knocked down in the last round. Kid has power. He can punch.
Okay, so yeah, somebody standing in the bag, you can get on the bag and exhibit power too. It's not just about power. It's about those guys at that level, on the top 10 level, on the better guys. They've developed their skills to the point where they belong at that level. And maybe in 3 or 4 years, maybe he does do that. Maybe, he does develop his skills to get to that level. But until he fights somebody that's relevant, it's a good gimmick. Make more money. That's good. Make people buy it.
He's making a ton of money. That's for sure. I wish I was making the money he was making.
I'm so happy for him. Yeah, I'm so happy for him.
But okay, he's a young kid. Trust me, like when he started saying he's gonna be world champion, I'm like, you're crazy. Like, what are you talking about? And then especially when he started saying he wants to fight Canelo, I'm like, dude, are you saying? But when we take whatever our personal biases are against that sort of statement, because we've been in the game for so long, you have a kid who's in his 20s, been training for 4 years. Could he possibly develop the skills enough to be able to challenge for a world title by the time he's what, like 31, 32?
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
You're in a gym. You're in a gym probably 2 or 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
You see a lot of fighters that have been doing it for 4 years. You see a lot of fighters that are 10-0. Would you say they need to fight Canelo? Why him? Or why him?
Mm-hmm. Big name, I guess.
What makes him special?
Celebrity.
So what makes it's like, okay, now he can say that I'm going to practice basketball for 4 years and I want to go play with the Lakers. That doesn't make sense, man. Doesn't make sense. It's not fair to the guys that are toiling in the gyms that you go to try, hopefully one day to make that championship fight happen for themselves. I don't think it's fair to them. I think that for us to give credence to somebody just because he's been in the gym 4 years, there's been guys that you see in the gym that have been in the gym for 15 years and never get to smell a title fight, never get to smell a money fight, and they're good fighters. So I think that it's unfair to the guys that are putting in the work. Now, I'm not saying he's not putting in the work, but putting in the work to deserve the opportunity when the time comes.
Well, if he continues doing this, I know like the guys that he's fighting are their MMA guys, but like when a fighter starts out, they're not fighting very good competition either.
No. So when's he gonna, in order to get rated, when's he gonna step it up?
Yeah. I don't know. Usually it happens like at the 15th, 16th fight?
It all depends. Some guys wanted there's Bohachuk, they wanted him to fight for a junior title when he had 10 fights.
He had a big amateur experience though. This kid has none. Like I look at like Chavez Jr., Chavez Jr. had to fight 20, 25 guys until finally okay,
Yeah, you're talking about somebody that was in with fighters, with actual fighters, not fighting MMA guys. This guy, I would like to see him fight some fighters. Fight some boxers, I should say. Fight some guys that have been okay. So fight a guy that's 10-10, but he's a cruiserweight. You know, fight a guy that's 10-20. Doesn't matter. Just fight a guy that's an actual fighter. You know, and then start beating those guys and get a better guy. I'd say within 3 or 4 fights, he could be doing that. He could be fighting those guys and step up to the next level, and then step up to the next level, and see how many levels he can step up before you get to the point where you're considered, say, top 5 or even top 10. Okay, then if you
go ahead, Abel.
Then if he is, then okay, then okay. But would you be okay with somebody doing that? If you saw somebody in the gym doing that and then calling out Canelo and I want to fight for that $1 million or whatever that is? Of course not.
Yeah.
Of course not. It's not correct. It's not right. It's not right.
Their argument
but
is
he's got a gimmick
okay.
though.
Yeah.
He's got a gimmick.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, their argument is, look, he has no amateur experience. This is kind of like his amateur experience crash course. Like these MMA guys that he's fighting were either past champions or contenders, and they're a lot better than what like our favorite fighters fought at that stage. Like the 0-25 guys, like you said, 10-10 guys.
No, they're not. No, they're not. They're MMA fighters. They're not boxers. They're MMA fighters. Let them fight MMA against those X4 champions. Then you can get a title shot. If you're going to be a boxer, fight boxers. You know, they're MMA fighters. What MMA fighter is beating a boxer? What MMA fighter is beating a boxer? Now, what boxer is beating an MMA guy? None. It's 2 different crafts.
Hasim Rahman Jr. lost to the football player, MMA guy, but I think that was like a size thing. But no, you're for the most part, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's 2 different crafts. Now, I respect that craft because, listen, those guys are gladiators, okay? Those guys are gladiators, but it's just a different craft. It's a different craft. It's like when the football players started coming into the sport, into boxing. And
yeah, the heavyweights.
Yeah, the heavyweights. I remember that guy that was from Michigan State. I remember I don't forget his name now, but PBC had it.
Seth, right?
Seth? Is that, I think so.
Yeah, like something like that.
I saw him fight over at the Fantasy Springs. And the thing that hit me the most, and I see that with a lot of fighters that have not been fighters from a young age. Okay, he'd be looking at a shot coming at him, he'd be closing his eyes like, oh, here it comes. You know, and fighters don't do that. You know, it's just like being a football player and closing your eyes when you're going to get hit. You know, no, you're going to get hit. That's just part of it. So I think the development takes its time, but also the development of being in there with actual boxers, not MMA guys. I don't care what kind of world champions they were. That's in that sport. But listen, again, I say he's got a gimmick. He's got it going. I just think that we get carried away. A lot of people get carried away, in my opinion, anyway. And who the hell am I? But in my opinion, I think that we get carried away with anointing him the next coming. You know, for what he's doing, yes, he is, but not for the top 10 guys that have been toiling and working, trying to get a title fight, trying to make that dream come true.
So then it's safe to say, in your opinion, he won't be a world champion, and Francis Ngannou has no chance to beat Tyson Fury.
Honestly, you really think so? You know, I don't care who's training him. Mike can train him, but Mike can't give him Mike's work. Mike can't give him Mike's amateur experience. Mike can't give him all those moments that Mike struggled with in fights. Mike can't give him that. Once it gets difficult in there, once the shit gets hard, once the shit hits a fan, it's a different story, man. You're talking about Tyson Fury, probably one of the best heavyweights we've seen in a long, long time. Whether we like him or dislike him, a guy that's 6'9", that really doesn't crack like, say, Ernie Shavers, but he's such a talent that a guy that's never really boxed is going to compete with him. We get carried away. I think the media gets carried away trying to build somebody up. And now the Tyson Fury should be fighting that fight. That's debatable. I mean, I think there's other guys that have been working for a title shot that maybe deserve a title shot, that he should fight Usyk. Yeah, they should come together and fight Usyk. But you know what? That's their careers, and they have their choices to make. But Ngannou doesn't belong in the ring with Tyson Fury. Just like Tyson Fury doesn't belong in the ring with him if he was in a cage. Different
very
sports.
true. Yeah, very,
Different
very true. But I think with heavyweight boxing, it's the one division where like the cliche, like, well, you never know, like one punch. Like I feel like that doesn't really apply to any other divisions as much as it does with heavyweight. Ngannou is a huge puncher.
It's not bigger than Wilder. Not bigger than Wilder. Wilder will hit you and put you out for 2 weeks. And Tyson Fury beat him twice. Stopped him the last time, right? Or 3 times. Was that the fight him 3 times already?
Stopped him twice.
Stopped him twice. Okay.
Yeah.
So how can you compare Ngannou to? That means you're telling me that Wilder's no good by telling me that. But Mike Tyson had a very famous saying. What was that saying? Everybody's got a plan.
So you get hit
until I hit him in the mouth.
Yep.
Yeah. As soon as Tyson Fury lands one, doesn't matter where. And the sad part about it is that Tyson Fury is such a showman. He's going to carry him for a little while, make it look like it's something, like a spectacle, but it's not going to be. But he understands Tyson Fury of all fighters understands more the promotional part of it.
So it's safe to say you're not betting on a Ngannou KO and Jake Paul winning a world title.
No, but if somebody wants to give me even money, I'd be more than happy to bet.
There you go. Abel's open. Contact his bookie for bets coming up in the future. Hey, Abel, great to have you on. Great chat as always. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Marcos. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Great chat as always with Abel Sanchez. And like you mentioned, yeah, it's going to be a very difficult thing for Jake Paul to become a world champion. Just us following the sport because when you get to that top 5, not even that, top 10, these guys have a world of experience from the amateurs. They had amateur careers, and that plays a big part in the development of a boxer. But hey, crazier things have happened in this world. Like he's young. He has a good amount of time. I don't know if he'll be able to ever fight a Canelo, but hey, maybe they position him into a world title fight with a WBO, like one of these secondary titles or something like that. If he wins, the odds are against him, honestly, just knowing the game and knowing that there's levels to this. But with that said, man, let's go to my chat with Oscar De La Hoya, who speaks about his documentary, speaks about his suicide attempt as a very young man in his Ferrari, and just overall kind of speaking about the documentary that's on Max, formerly known as HBO Max, now playing. Like I mentioned earlier, highly recommended. Go watch it because it gives you a whole different perspective on the Golden Boy. But with that, let's roll the tape and go to my chat with Oscar De La Hoya. Hey, Mr. Oscar De La Hoya in his offices here in Los Angeles to speak about his documentary that is releasing on Max that chronicles your life, your journey through this crazy world of boxing. I had a chance to see it last night, Oscar, and there's a lot of things, man, that...
Did you see both parts?
I saw both parts, yeah. There's a lot of things that left with me on that, but I think like 2 overarching themes on this doc is one, like you as a person, especially when you were growing up, all you wanted was just to be loved by your parents. And I feel that the other thing in regards to this is like, it's a lot of like generational like trauma. I feel like you wanted love from your parents, and then like I thought like it's a very emotional part, like when your 3 kids were on there saying like, hey, we just wanted him to be around, we just wanted his love. Now that it's out, how do you feel about everything?
I mean, I myself personally feel liberated. I don't feel trapped anymore, living somebody else's life in a way. I mean, because when I was 6 years old, starting to fight, everybody already had a dream for me. Everybody already had a plan for me to become a champion, to, maybe one day take my family out of the neighborhood because I'm winning money professionally when I'm fighting. He's the ticket out. So that's a lot of pressure, as a kid. So when I win the Olympic gold medal, now I have the pressure from the world. Now it's like, oh, the golden boy is born, and now it's like, now he has to be this and that and always smile, and but deep down inside, everything that I've endured, all the trauma that I've had over the years as a kid, it's like just building up, and I'm never like dealing with it, and so all the money, the fame comes in, and it's a lot of pressure. I was a volcano ready to erupt, man. And I did erupt a few times, and I just do not know how I'm alive till this day. I just do not know how I'm alive. That's how tough and difficult, those situations were, like dealing with them. I mean, look, you talk about mental health. You talk about all the pain. You talk about. I must have been like depressed like 10 times over. Mm-hmm. And luckily I had the ring as an outlet. That's where I can let out my frustrations. That's where I can like be myself.
You said that you feel like lucky to be alive. Like, do you ever wonder like why? Like that you have a better purpose, a higher purpose? Like,
yeah. I mean, I just feel that it's not time to go. I just feel that I'm blessed. I feel that, somebody is looking out for me. I don't know. Because there's been many times where I shouldn't be here. That's for sure. That have happened in my life. And the documentary will explain all that. It'll show you. It's a roller coaster ride of emotions. And, yeah, I'm a lot of people don't make it. That's for sure. You hear all these horror stories, oh my gosh, this person just took their life, or this or that. It happens, and I'm glad I'm not a statistic.
Were you ever close to that?
Yeah, several times.
Like you contemplated suicide and all that?
Oh yeah,
really?
Yeah, several times. I remember one time I had bought my first Ferrari. I was like 22, and I was driving about 175 miles per hour on the freeway, and hoping that something would happen, like things like that.
Yeah.
I remember, and the documentary will explain this. When I was fighting Pacquiao, I wanted it all to be over. I was hoping he would just land that perfect punch, just to end everything. So I thought about it several times. Glad it didn't happen.
Now, us as fans of yours, glad that didn't happen as well. Looking at the documentary as a whole, like to you, what was like the hardest part to watch?
Yeah, my kids talking about me, because I didn't want this documentary to be sugar-coated, or I didn't want this documentary to just be another documentary that, it's all life is great, and, and people think that it's wonderful to have money and be a celebrity, and, and this and that, and world titles. That's all bullshit. It means nothing to me. I think what's more important is that I finally set myself free. I finally figured out. Well, I didn't figure it out. I did a lot of fucking work. I went through rehabs. I've been doing a lot of therapy. All that over the years has helped me to make this documentary now. Like, I'm good with myself, so now I can just speak the truth.
What's been the reaction from your family that you've gotten about?
I haven't talked to them.
You haven't?
No.
At all?
No.
So
when it releases, they're going to see it for the first time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess, how does that feel? Kind of embracing for that.
I'm petrified. I'm scared. Family will always forgive you and love you, and and judge you, and but at the end of the day, they will always love you. And family, if they understand, they understand. And that's obviously the scary part. But whatever anybody says or critiques or whatever, like, I don't care. It's like I'm good. I'm good with myself.
I feel like the first part's like what shaped you to be you based on how you grew up. And I think the other thing that it really stuck with me is obviously like me coming from a first generation immigrant family that crossed the border here like illegally, like the way that not only you're taught to express emotions, but the emotions shown to you, I could really relate to what you said in there. Where like me myself, my dad never told me like I love you or gave me a constant like that. So like I think that part really struck a chord with me, and I think it will for other people. But do you ever have like a chance to ask like your dad or your mom like, yo, like why were you so hard on me?
Yeah. So,
or like your dad now that you're older.
Yeah, because my mom passed when I was 17.
Yeah, you didn't have that
so I
chance.
never had that chance to like say anything to her. You know, it's like I would get beatings like all the time. You know, but I did talk to her. Like, went to her grave and everything, and I forgave her. Like, I basically forgave her. Like, I started my conversation. Can you cuss here?
Yeah.
I gave her. I had a whole script on what I was gonna tell her, and then I just like ripped it and said, you know what? I told her, you know what? Fuck you. Why did you do this to me? Da da da. But at the end of the conversation, I was like, man, I forgive you. I love you. I'm sorry. So it's like I freed myself from her, you know, from all that pain and trauma. With my father, yeah, he's a hard man. He's like, you know, macho, and you know that's how it is. And so he never told me that he loves me. But so like 2 years ago, I said, you know, I'm gonna go up to him and just tell him, hey, I love you, Dad. And I was scared. I was scared to tell him. Like, it was crazy. But then finally, I just hugged him and told him I love you. And he cried and told me he loves me too. Hasn't said it since, but you know, but that's just their character. You know, you can imagine how they grew up, how tough they grew up. So it's like, for me, it's an understanding of like, okay, let me have a little compassion here. But it's still painful. It's still traumatizing. You know, it's like you ask yourself why. So documentary, yeah, it'll show you all that roller coaster, you know, that I've been through.
Yeah, there was a part where you said that like because of that, you wanted to be a people pleaser, like to please people because you just wanted it to get that emotion from people that you never got. You know, touch on that. Like how much did that like really like affect you through all these situations that you yourself found yourself in throughout your life?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's crazy because, you know, I'm sure you have a lot of listeners here that want to ask and want to see those pictures of me in women lingerie and all that. You little sneaky bastards, you. And I show all that too. I explain exactly what the emotion was behind it, and what's crazy is in the documentary we found. Yeah,
I saw that. How'd you guys find her?
HBO, man.
Yeah,
HBO. We found her, and they had asked me, "Are you sure you want her in there to talk?" I go, "Yeah, I want this documentary to be as candid and as open as possible. I want the truth." And so she'll explain as well, like exactly why I would go to her, you know, and do drugs and drink and.
Yeah, she mentioned that she kind of got the feeling that it's like it was the only like time that you could really express yourself and you had no pressure, no expectations on you.
It's
that
crazy.
You could really let loose.
It's crazy, and all I would do is just like cry to her.
Yeah,
it's crazy, but the doc will explain like everything like. I'm sure it'll have like people will have a different perspective. Like I think people think, oh well, when Oscar was partying and drinking, like that's all he wanted to do is have fun, and it wasn't like that. It was crazy. It was like more of an escape. It was more of like, man, I just want somebody to love me, you know. That's why I would go like to these clubs and strip clubs and meet women and this and that, because I wanted to have a connection with somebody just so I can talk and cry. It's pretty interesting.
The big part that I thought too, and this is something that I kind of always thought also, is you mentioned after the Pacquiao part where you're saying like I wish he would have knocked me out to end all this, and then you said like, oh man, sometimes I just kind of wonder like, man, if I really did give it my all, what could have happened, what could have become.
Right.
Do you find yourself sometimes thinking about that, like, man, if I really didn't do these things and took that last camp serious or these other camps like more serious, like what more I could have accomplished?
No, look, I always took my camps very serious. I think the fact that I went back down to 147, and I was older, obviously, because I was in, how old was I? Like 30s, mid 30s maybe.
Yeah, I think like maybe 34, 35.
But I was an old 35, you know, because there's young and there's old in boxing, depending on how you treated your body. I was an old 35, and I was already literally behind the eight ball. You know, I didn't have, let's say, I didn't really have a chance. I didn't have a chance with Pacquiao, and I knew that. But you know, I'm gonna go through the training camp, and the fact that I weighed in. I don't think people know this. I was weighing about 142.
Jeez.
Yeah.
From middleweight, right?
Yeah, from middleweight. I went down to 42 at that age. So that was like, okay, now I'm like really behind the eight ball here. Fuck, I have no chance. But then when I started getting beat up in training camp, which I never did, sparring for me was like, man, I loved it because I can dominate everybody. But when I was getting beat up in sparring by Edwin Valero, by Victor Ortiz, is it? Yeah, Victor Ortiz. I was getting beat up by them. So then I started drinking in camp. I started drinking a lot of wine.
And that was the first
beer.
time?
That was the first time ever.
Yeah.
Okay? And so that was like 2 weeks before the fight. And right there and then I just gave up. I already knew, I'm a dead man walking. And so when I went in the ring, I mean, he beat the hell out of me. And in one round, I was thinking, man, please end it, man. Just end it with one punch. Come on. I mean, I have a good chin. And he didn't drop me, but yeah, then you know, they called it off, and that was it.
When you look at the documentary as a whole, the two parts, like what do you want people to come away with this or really get out of it?
I didn't do it for people to get anything out of it. I didn't do it. I mean, people are gonna critique whatever they want to critique. I mean, you make up your own conclusion. I mean, I've already made mine, and I'm good with it, you know. So whatever you decide and whatever people feel, you know, it's up to you.
And finally, Oscar, you're good now, right? Like you're at peace, like, or you're still working through things, or you're balanced?
Just balance. Life is balance, man. You know, people always told me, oh, well, you have problems. Okay, well, therefore you have to go to rehab. Therefore, you got to go to fucking therapy, this, that. Well, okay. What if I just, like, get a hold of my life? What if I just find balance? And it took all these years to figure it out. But it's possible, you know? It's like, but people try to label me as, oh, you're a problem child. You have problems. This, you must fix them. That. You know, you can't tell somebody what to do. Especially if it's very personal, you know, you got to let it happen yourself. It's got to happen organically. And so, you know, like I said, I mean, I wasn't ready to do this documentary 5 years ago. I'm ready now because I'm just good.
I know they had told me to stop, but I do want to add this. I think what I got from it, and I think I speak from a place not like your situation, but I did endure a lot of abuse and family trauma, and I feel that it's apparent like how much impact a parent can have on their kids, and that kind of how it becomes cyclical. Where like the sins of the father or like family trauma really does go through generations with what we do as sons, but also what we do as fathers to our kids.
No, of course, and but the cycle has to stop somewhere, right? Unfortunately, we lived it, our parents lived it, and it's up to us to kind of, you know, put that wall up, right? And it's a work in progress, you know. It's like, I mean, I'm glad that my kids had mothers that cared for them and loved them. They never saw any type of physical abuse or any type of, like, you know, mental abuse. I just wasn't present. And that's abuse too, in their part, you know, but everything can be repairable, you know, if you try, if you make the effort, and it's never too late. And that's why I did this documentary, because it's never too late.
As always, we thank Oscar De La Hoya for his time, inviting us to the Golden Boy office to speak to him about this documentary that is out Now on HBO Max, and moving along here with the program, I'm going to go ahead and include this chat that I had with Virgil Hunter on overall his insight, his perspective on this Spence versus Crawford fight, what he thought about it, why Terence Crawford was able to get the win. And he breaks this down so eloquently, not only on the tactics, but also on the training, on the mental aspect, on the training aspect that went into this fight, with him really giving an emotional plea to Errol Spence about taking the rematch, and him just making sure that everything's checked out, everything's okay before he goes into a rematch with Terence Crawford. So let's roll the tape. You guys will thank me. This is one of it's probably the best chat I had about the fight with someone. So check it out. Here it is. Your initial thoughts, Virgil, of how everything shook out on that Saturday night.
Well, first of all, if you'll let me, I'd like to give congratulations to Terence and Bo Mack and his team, and also congratulate Errol Spence and his team, and that my feelings and heart goes out to them under the situation. It's got to be tough, but to hang on in there. Watching the fight, I think, in my estimation, it just became an issue of who had the better timing. I know Errol said that his timing was off, but I don't know how many times he's faced fighters who has great timing coming back at him. And that could be the reason why, and make you think that your time is off, because all of a sudden you get in touch with things you normally wasn't getting touched with before. I know Sean Porter had early success touching Earl with pretty much clean shots and everything. Kind of had him just a little befuddled. So I don't know if it was the time, if that was him being completely off, or just Terence, who I said in an earlier interview, he's always in the gym. He's always working on his craft. He doesn't have any bad habits. He's never abused his body. So years and years and years of that. And then also remember, one advantage of going through the weight classes is that you come up fighting faster guys. So you can carry that into a higher weight class. You come up fighting faster guys. So you started out quick, and you took the quickness, and you also was able to take the power with you. So it was apparent that he had superb timing, and that but the main thing is, to kind of echo off what Teddy Atlas said, because so many people, great trainers and great boxing minds, have said this: Crawford has eyes. He can see. And when you can see, things become slow to you, because speed is in the body, quickness is in the mind. And when you could process things quicker, it becomes much slower to you. It's just like a great high average baseball hitter. It's like a great running back. When he could see, those holes become bigger to him that appear smaller to somebody else. So I think if we're going to make it all even across the board, physicality, preparation, and everything like that, I think that the timing was the biggest difference in my estimation.
Okay. So a big thing that was talked about in the fight was Crawford's ability to take away the jab, or an effective jab of Errol in the fight. You breaking it down with your trainer eye, how was he able to do that?
Well, he was parrying the jab and jabbing back at the same time. So when you parry an incoming jab and jab yours back, it takes a split second slower for the guy's jab who's being parried to get it back in position, particularly if he's not used to getting his jab parried. So if you would look at the fights when Crawford would counter off Errol's jab, you would see that he would parry it with his left hand, that he would pin it in, that he would push it over, and he had the ability and rhythm to time it and throw his at the same time. So he would beat him back into position with his jab. Then the ability to turn short. For whatever reasons, Errol's legs have gotten much wider over his career. And when your legs are wide like that, you have to dip under your legs to get your body back under you to make a turn, whereas Crawford's legs are constantly under him. So all he has to do is just turn. So I think that threw him off a little bit. Just the subtle movements, the movements that make a big difference. It's a passage in the Bible that says the little foxes spoil the vine. So it's the little things in boxing that makes a big difference.
Mm, mm. You know, overall, I was just surprised about how dominant he was in the fight. Did that take you aback? Because I know a lot of people expected this to be a 50-50 fight.
I would have to say somewhat. I was surprised at how easy he was able to get off his shots that really counted. But again, I did an earlier interview with I can't think of it. What's the announcer for Showtime?
Morrow, Brian,
No,
Al,
the Hispanic kid.
oh, Abner,
No.
Raul.
The one that hosts the fighters entrance.
Not sure, but
Fighters,
we get the gist. One of the Showtime announcers.
yeah, one of the Showtime announcers. I told him that Crawford had spent 2 or 3 days down in my gym visiting Andre, and of course he came to work out. And I don't know if he remembers, but I was padding, and I was amazed at the snap that he had in his punches. And I brought that point up, that he had great snap in his punches, and that it was a whipping effect. And when you get hit with a punch like that, it could light you out real quick. It could light you out real quick. And if you look at the punches that counted, each one of them had snap on it. That jab that knocked him down, if you look at the snap at the end of that jab, it completely twisted Errol's neck around. So it was a concussive jab. It was concussive. If you look at the uppercut that he caught him with along the ropes that knocked him over, look at the follow through on it. He completely snapped it over. So, and then the right hook that put him down, it was a snap shot right on the temple. So I had kind of mentioned that. I don't know if they took it to heart, anything like that. I don't know if his power was underestimated. I said that he was built from the ground up, that he was very physically strong, because I've been a high-end athlete myself in a few sports, and I know that type of build, and I know that type of physicality, and the way he's built. He's got that African blood running through him, and he's built from the ground up. He's not built from the shoulders down. He's built from the ground up. I don't know if you ever played basketball, but the biggest guard, the guards that gave me the most problems when I was playing was that 6'5", 5'11", 190 point guard that you couldn't move off the block because he was built from the ground up. So I kind of put that out there too, just to let them know what they were coming up against. But whether it took it to heart or not, I don't know.
Yeah, that was a big question coming into this fight. I feel was, how would Terence be able to take the power of a supposed bigger guy? No, he was bigger. Errol's a bigger guy than Terence, but how we would take that power. But you know, I've always said this about Terence too, because I just know he used to wrestle, and I know like wrestlers' strength, they always say is different. It's just different because day in and day out, you're going against bigger guys and you're throwing them around. And when I found out years and years ago that Terence used to wrestle, and then hearing like, oh no, this dude's a lot stronger than what he is, like I knew instantly, like, oh, he's wrestler strength. Like I've seen that in the gym day in and day out. But no, yeah, you're right. Like the perceived smaller guy was the stronger guy.
And he was a state level wrestler.
Mm.
Well, he has more leverage in his strength. You see, Errol couldn't push him back and shove him back like he normally shoves people back, because they're boxing from the shoulders down. Their strength is from the shoulders down. If you do the wrong strength and conditioning work and you neglect your legs and not doing bodybuilding leg exercises, you have to do ring leg exercises. You have to strengthen your legs in the ring. You get fighters that can run straight for 5 miles, but if you had them go lateral for 10 minutes each side without stopping, they can't do it. So you have to have ring legs, which means that you have to have strength in every movement you make. Step over strength, in and out strength, lateral strength. You have to have ring leg conditioning. You just can't squat and be in one position and get quad dominant and not work your inner thighs and things like that, and work your tendons and your ligaments and things to get the ring. It doesn't equate to ring strength.
Mm. You being a trainer, Virgil, was there anything else that popped out to you in the fight?
Well, I could go back to some of the episodes that I saw, and I again I said about the heat factor. They're training in that hot, humid Dallas heat, and then having to make a weight in that hot, humid Dallas heat, and then coming over to the Vegas dry heat. It's got to take a double toll on you. If you notice, Errol, after most workouts, he would flop down in front of that fan when you would look at the episodes, which means that he was just exhausted. So that means you're leaving the gym with nothing. So you're not going to come back with everything. So each day you're leaving a little bit in the gym. You're leaving a little bit in the gym. I don't know if this is true, but a source told me that a week before the fight in Vegas, that Errol ran Mount Charleston for 5 miles. Now, Mount Charleston is high elevation. I don't know if you're familiar with Mount Charleston in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I've been there with Sean actually.
Right. If you've never run hills before and you running a week out from a fight, if you never run like that in high elevation a week out, that's 3 or 4 or 5 days of recovery right there on your legs, because you're subjecting them to something one time that you haven't done at any time during your whole camp. So all of a sudden your legs are like, what's going on? What's going on? I got to recuperate. So that's not making excuses for Earl. I'm just saying these things. I don't know how true it is. This is just what a source told me. But if it is true, I could definitely see his legs not being there on fight night a week out. That's a little too much. But again, going back to the heat, you know, for a fight after you weigh in, you can replenish yourself, but it takes another level to rejuvenate yourself. You can rehydrate, but the next step is to rejuvenate. And the rejuvenation comes from having rest days in camp, not grinding every single day. You have to trust your body. Once you get in condition, and I'm just talking about what I used to do with Andre and things like that. I can't say it for everybody but once you get in condition and you start looking real sharp in camp, now you start cutting days out of the training and you start adding rest days, because that's where the strength comes. That's where the stamina comes. And people say, well, you got to make a weight. Well, that's the day you don't eat meat. You go vegan, you go eggs, you go avocado, you go Ezekiel toast, things like that. You take walks, but you rest a full day. And then you start your high intensity. You only fight for 36 minutes. You only fight for 36 minutes. So why are you in the gym 2 hours grinding? All I need to be is in tip-top shape for 36 minutes, which means 1 hour of high-intensity training. Once I'm in top condition, and usually they'll start peaking 3 weeks out before a fight and things like that, here comes the rest days. So I have a low-intensity day where I get instruction and things like that, where I'm going maybe 50, 60%, and that might go an hour and a half because I'm stopping and going. Then the next day I'll go high intensity straight through, hit the heavy bag, skip rope for 15 minutes straight, hit the heavy bag for 15 minutes straight, hit the pass for 15 minutes straight, do some form of ring working with my legs for 15 minutes straight, and I'm out without stopping. Just go right through it, high intensity, and I'm out. So I don't know if the training sessions were grueling. I do know that if I was in Dallas and had a fight of that magnitude, I would have got out of that heat. I would have got out of there, because if you look at his age and the time Errol makes weight, been making that weight, it can't be good for you to go into 2 different types of heat. It just can't be. Crawford was in Colorado Springs. I don't think the heat up there got no higher than in the mid-high 70s this time of year.
A lot of people have said that didn't look like Errol. A lot of people have suggested online that maybe the weight cut affected him and it just caught up with him finally. On Errol's Instagram, he wrote, he's at 154 now. He had been talking about moving up to 154. Do you think the weight cut had anything to do with the performance, or was it, you know what, stop with all this stuff? It's just Crawford is a special fighter. He's always been special. The better man won.
We're in no business where we can make excuses. We're in no business where we can always troubleshoot in our own mind, and Errol has the right to do that because he's the only one that really knows. But as far as the whole show, as far as the whole presentation, the lead up to the fight and everything, we can't bring no excuses in at all. It is what it is, and we have to assume that that's what it was going to be. So it's one thing that we're guilty of in boxing. We always troubleshoot why this happened. And usually that's the people who picked one guy or the other guy to win. And so when their guy loses, now they're going to start finding reasons why he lost. Errol didn't give an excuse, although he'd been saying he's going to move up to 54. I don't take that as an excuse why he lost the fight. He has a right to move up to 54. He has a right to say that, but he didn't take any credit away from Crawford. Crawford said he can move to 54, so it shouldn't be anything that would impede a second fight if it's going to be one. But you have to give all the credit to Terence Crawford and his team, because I saw skill win that fight. I didn't see the lack of what Errol. It might have been, if it would have been somebody else in there, it might have been the same Errol. He started out the same Errol in the first round. He started out the same Errol. So if it had been anybody else in there, it'd have been the same Errol. But now we got a guy who can move back just out of range and move back in range just in the blinking of an eye. Now we got a guy that when you step two, he can step over and counter you at different angles. So we can't say that it was the weight cut. And it's not acceptable in the sport if the sport's going to be respected at all. He'll get another opportunity to troubleshoot the situation. And if he comes out on top, then he has a point to prove. There's a conversation to be had about the first fight if he comes out on top. But then you'll have Crawford fans saying that Crawford's not a real 154, just like they're saying he wasn't a real 147. So I think they should just leave him. If they box at 54, whoever wins, give them the credit, respect the loser, and leave it at that and not find reasons why they lost or why they won.
Yeah, I was left speechless, honestly, when the fight was finished, because I was just in awe of how much of a master class Terence put on. And for a fight of that caliber, he had, like, on the biggest stage, like, he showed why he's special. And if there was ever a fight where he needed to show separation or show why he's been that guy that everybody has said he was, that was it. And he did it. Given that, Virgil.
Let me say one more thing. You have
Yeah.
to realize that Terence has been ridiculed for several years about being scared of fighting Errol. So that has to eat at you. That has to eat at you. Errol has confronted him at fights and things like that. It's been on tape, it's been on social media and things like that. And Terence is taking it all in. He sucked it up. He's taking it all in. He took it like a man. But you can never underestimate one person's resolve. And when that opportunity came, he has the physical ability to take it to another level. Just like the NBA greats in a playoff game, you see another level go up, and he has that ability to take it to another level. So if you add in all the years of taunting, all the years that you scared, you hide behind your promoter, this and that, take less money, things like that, the purse not being right, or you just scared and things like that. You left a lot of resolve in the man. You left a mountain of determination into the man. So, of course, on fight night, he's going to be somebody you're going to have to show me. You're going to have to beat me. And you can see he did his homework. They did their homework. They found out the tendencies, and they capitalized on the tendencies.
Given that, then, given how this first fight played out, should they rematch, in your opinion, Virgil?
Oh, boy. Um, looking at it from the fighter's perspective, I think a rematch is in order if the fighter wants it. Again, it's like I said in the first interview I did, and Roy Jones did an interview a couple of days ago, but I had said it before. Getting thrown out of a car like that, not only did you get thrown out of the car going over 100 miles an hour, you were intoxicated. So that's a double whammy. That right there is like a running back taking 10 years of all-pro linebacker hits 15 and 20 times a game. The collision, just that one situation that traumatized you like that. I don't know, how long was he in a coma?
Oh, I don't know, to be honest. I think
When
it was
you're
a
in a coma,
few days.
when I had that health scare, I was in a coma.
Mhm.
And a coma takes a lot out of you. It took me a year to get right, to get my sense of, and I wasn't in a wreck. I wasn't traumatized physically. To get my balance and my sense of balance right and everything right, just coming out of a coma. And the doctors told me that. I had to learn how to walk again, being in a coma 7 to 8 days. That's what it takes out of you. You got to learn how to walk again. So to be in a coma, then have the reconstructive surgery, I was just shocked at the color of his face. And the fact that he was bleeding from his nose, but the blood wasn't running. He was bleeding from his eye, but the blood wasn't running. He was bleeding from his mouth, but his lips puffed up instead of the blood running. It was like it was just clotting, like there was a normal blood flow passages in his face. I don't know, did he have reconstructive surgery on his face?
I believe so. He did.
So you got to look at that situation because of the way he puffed up. So those are concerns. Those are medical concerns to me. Then on top of the trauma of the wreck, and then all the training for the next two fights, the sparring. I heard that he spars 15 rounds and things like, even if he had a headgear on, he's sparring those many rounds, even if you blocking the punches and they hitting you, sparring those many rounds, coming off of that type of trauma and then getting hit with those type of shots. If it was me, I wouldn't, if he was my guy, I would tell him, look, this is what you possibly could face. You could end up shuffling the rest of your life. But I can't make a decision for you. All I could do is give you the best advice, seek the best advice, seek the best ways to figure out that this doesn't happen again. There's definitely got to be some changes made. We can't go in the same way, but give yourself time. Do not jump back into that fight this year. Give yourself time. If you need to stay in condition, you could come to the gym after a couple of months and stay in shape. You can box 4 or 5 rounds with a guy, then maybe we'll get a guy in there and simulate a fight with regular fight gloves on for 4 or 6 rounds, simulate a fight and things like that. But do not go back in there this year. That's what I would recommend. But
Does
who
it,
am I?
yeah. Does it look any different at 154, in your honest opinion?
It's hard to predict. You can only predict it after the fight is over. I'm not one to predict the future. I'm sure he'll feel much better at 54. I'm sure he'll feel much better at 54. But I think that he has to consider when to grind and when not to grind. And to trust his body and to get with the dietitian on the days that you rest. It took a long time for me to convince Andre that you have to rest. What happens is they start feeling real good, so now they want to go, go, go. So they leave it in the gym. Once you start feeling good, you got to keep it right there. Once I run a hill, a 4-mile hill in 25 minutes, I don't go to a 6-mile hill. Let me run the 4-mile hill in 24 minutes. Then let me run the 4-mile hill in 21 minutes. That lets me know I'm getting in better shape. I don't increase the mileage, I reduce the time. So on the days that he rests, you got to rest, man. You have to rest. You just can't grind. And running all these miles every day and things like that. Once you're in condition, you get the rest of the conditioning by resting. You get the rest of the condition by resting. You don't increase the mileage, you reduce the time. And so all those things that I would try to put into him to consider. Be real thoughtful about it. Don't let ego and pride get in the way. Pride comes before the fall. But only he knows how he felt. Only he knows and can play the fight back through his mind. Nobody else could do it for him. He was in there. He can play the fight back in his mind. He knows what goes on. So right now, it's definitely pride talking. But he has to settle down and let reasoning come into the equation. He has to let common sense come into the equation. Look, you're going to be a Hall of Famer, son. I believe that. You don't have nothing to be ashamed of. Nothing to be ashamed of. But at the same time, you have children that depend on you. You should do okay this fight. You should be fine for life and things like that. You have to think about your health. You have to think about what you've been through. You have to think about all the things that even before the accident, he admitted to me one time that he wasn't living the best lifestyle. And then that wasn't a big secret in the boxing world. This is irreversible damage. I had an old trainer tell me once that drinking is worse than cocaine for a fighter. And I used to warn Adrian about it and things like that. It don't take long, man. It's irreversible damage to your organs. And when your organs are damaged, your blood flows right. When it's gone, you're not getting it back. It's not coming back. You hear old fighters say, I'm in the best condition in my life at 36. No, you're in the best condition a 36-year-old can get into. You're not in the best condition a 22-year-old gonna get into. So don't kid yourself. But I think right now, and I understand, I would probably feel the same way. My pride would be bruised. My ego would be bruised. I had to eat my words. This happened in front of the world. It's not an easy thing to live with. But if Errol can hear what I'm saying, it's okay. It's okay. 5 years from now, only boxing people will be talking about it, but you will be remembered as a great fighter and a great champion. And so that's nothing to be ashamed of. In this sport, it's gonna always be somebody come along better than you. If Crawford hang around too long, it'll happen to him. So I just want him to give himself time to reason, be very reasonable, to look at your children, go to the neurologist, go to the doctor, get the honest opinion. Don't get the opinion that you want to hear. Get the honest opinion from 2 or 3 of them. Tell them, look, don't tell me what I want to hear. Tell me the truth. And if they all telling you the same thing, and you willing to gamble on your health and you willing to gamble on your life because of pride, then, there's nothing I can tell you. I'm just being very concerned about an older man that'd be 70 years old in November. It takes skills to get old. You don't get old being foolish. It takes skills to get old. Pride don't get you old. Pride will get you killed. There's a lot of people in the graveyard would come up if they could talk to you, tell you, if I didn't let pride get in the way, I'd still be here. Wow. So, he could be one fight away from permanent damage. We don't know how much damage this fight has done. What we see on the face is a lot more going on the inside. He has to pay attention. His parents has to pay attention to his speech patterns, his walk patterns, his reactive patterns. He needs to be tested neurologically. He needs to be tested. He needs to go through a battery of tests, brain scans, things like that. He needs to cover all the bases. Don't play with your health. Don't play with your life. You got a full life ahead of you. When you got into this business, you knew it was a short career. You knew it was a dangerous career. It's a career that people have died in. Don't let that one punch let your head hit that canvas and bounce off that canvas, and there you go with a brain bleed, because you were in a serious wreck and you don't know that one punch in the right place could give you that brain bleed. So you don't know the effects that you will be feeling in the next 2 months from this. I'm sure if he's honest with himself, he's feeling the effects of that fight right now. So, Errol, if you hear me, please cover all the bases. Don't look for that fight this year. And I'm not overruling Derrick or anybody else, or your parents or anybody else. I'm just saying to you, from somebody who's been on this earth for a while and who's overcome a health scare himself. I know what it's like being in a coma. Please don't skip no corners. Don't let pride get in the way of you living a long and productive and fruitful life. That's what I have to say.
Yeah, and we wish that to everybody who steps in the ring, that nothing happens to them that could permanently affect their health or the way they could provide for their family. I did want to ask you, just get your perspective on Terence. Obviously, I think it's a no-brainer, pound for pound, #1 right now. But in the pantheon of the greats in the sport, given this performance, where does he rank, or does he still have a little bit more work to do?
No, I think if he stopped right here, he put the cherry on the top. If he said today, this past Saturday was his last fight, you can't deny him his place in the Hall of Fame. You can't deny him among the greats of the sport, the Durans, the Leonards, and things like that. You can't deny him that. So to win titles in 3 weight classes, to beat undisputed in 2, you can't take him out of the record books. There are only a few champions who've done that, and they're in the Hall of Fame. Right now, he's got all the flowers coming to him if he stopped today. No matter what happens the rest of the way, he can only add to putting more cherries on the top. But as far as I'm concerned, he's got his cherry on the top now and his flowers.
Yeah,
So,
I don't see anyone beating him either, Virgil. He's probably more than likely going to end up retiring undefeated.
only if he stays around too long.
Yeah.
But he hasn't taken any punishment. That's the main thing. His reflexes seem to be intact. He's gifted. And like I said, he has eyes. And when you have eyes, you have reaction. And that's what eyes do for you. You react. If you got slow eyes and somebody pull a gun out your peripheral and your eyes are slow, you're going to get shot. But if you got great peripheral, you see them pull out, you're going to get out the range of fire. They're going to have to find you. So he has those assets. And eyes first, which translates into reflex second. Then he has fast twitch muscles. He's got endurance muscles. He's got the whole package to be a successful fighter. I believe he could fight at this level for the next 2 years for sure.
That was Virgil Hunter, and I told you guys, gems, great insight, analysis from Virgil. Man, just an overall a great chat, and just, man, he drops these isms on you that stay with you. You know, like, hey, pride will get you to the grave. You know, speed is physical, quickness of the mind. That one, just one of the great boxing minds, really. And I hope to see him in person a lot more as well, because his presence certainly is miss. And I'll never forget, you know, he gave Andre one of the all-time great motivational speeches after that Kovalev knockdown in that first fight, man. That's one of those things that you look at it and you're like, wow, oh my God, like this is something out of a movie. And geez, you know, for the next 6 rounds, man, Andre put in that work in that first Kovalev fight. So a big thank you to Virgil, a big thank you to Abel Sanchez as well. This weekend in the boxing ring, 2 fights. Well, we think 2 fights. I think so. As of this recording, Eddie Hearn, AJ are going to make an announcement on an opponent. I've heard Chisora. I've heard Gerald Washington. I've heard Otto Wallin. let's see what happens with it. But it looks to be that Joshua will fight. Dillian White tested positive for an adverse finding on his test. White posting on his social media like saying, hey, give me a chance to clear myself. Why would I be the one that pushes for VADA testing and then I get popped for something? Give me my due course to be able to defend myself. So we got to wait and see what happens on that. But from the looks of things, it looks like Joshua will still fight this weekend in London, but also in action as well. Oscar Valdez against Emmanuel Navarrete at 130 pounds, in a fight that I expect to be a barn burner. They're going to go back and forth, and I expect a very violent fight and a even more violent stoppage in that fight. It all goes down this weekend on ESPN in Arizona. So if you're in the Arizona area, get tickets to this fight. This is not going to disappoint. That's for sure. So just make sure to go ahead and follow us on social media at Fight Up TV. Follow me as well at Hey It's Marcos V on my Instagram. I got it back, as well as on Twitter. Subscribe if you haven't already, or if this is the first time tuning in to us. And thank you guys for the continued support over the years. Keep rocking with us. Keep watching our content. We got a lot more great stuff headed your way this week, as we'll have full coverage of the Valdez versus Navarrete fight. The 19th, we get a week off. There's no fights because Better BF got hurt. He won't be fighting Callum Smith. And the week after that, Alexander Usyk takes on Daniel Dubois. On behalf of the Fight Up team, I, Marcos Villegas, the founder of Fight Up TV, thank you for watching and thank you for your support. Have a great, productive rest of your week, and take care of yourselves, man. Don't stress too much, because stress is the real killer. That is for sure. Take it easy, guys. Bye.